The frost lay thick across the plains, silvering the grass and stiffening the boards of the old fence that stretched as far as the eye could see. The morning sun hadn't yet found its strength. It rose pale and cold, painting everything in blue and gold. Jack Rowan stood by his wagon, a steaming cup of black coffee in his hand, watching the horizon like a man, expecting nothing and yet afraid something might come. He was the kind of cowboy, folks in Iron Creek whispered, about the one who'd turned down every woman that had ever smiled his way. Pretty Clara Hastings, the sheriff's daughter, had baked him pies every Sunday for a month. He'd thanked her and never taken a bite. Widow Jane offered him a warm home for winter. He'd tipped his hat and rode away. Some said his heart had frozen out on the trail the day he buried his brother in the canyon snow. Others said he just preferred the silence of horses over the sound of a woman's voice. But that morning something different cut through that silence. The creak of a wagon wheel, broken halfway to nowhere, and a woman's sharp cry of frustration. Jack turned, squinting through the frost, and saw her, a woman in a worn brown coat, cheeks raw from the cold, trying to lift a shattered wheel alone. Her gloves were torn, her breath rising like smoke in the cold air. She didn't look like a lady from town. She looked like someone who'd fought the world and learned to keep standing. Jack walked over slow, his boots crunching the frost. "You'll freeze out here if you keep wrestling with that," he said, voice low, rough as gravel. She didn't look up. "I've frozen before," she answered, pushing against the wheel, refusing to let it fall. He set his coffee cup down on the fence post, stepped closer. "That wheel's done. You'll need a new one." She straightened, brushing her hands on her coat, eyes sharp and steady. "And you'll need a reason to mind your own business, cowboy." Jack smirked just barely. "Guess I ain't got one." He bent down and lifted the wheel, like it weighed nothing, setting it against the fence. She watched him, the tension in her shoulders not softening. "You always this helpful?" she asked, "or just bored?" "Neither," he said. "Just don't like watching fools freeze." That earned him a glare. "Then stop watching." There was silence between them for a long moment, the kind that feels like a storm about to break. Then she sighed and looked toward the little cabin smoking in the distance. "That's my place. If you're looking to lecture someone, pick someone else." "You live out here alone?" he asked. "Since spring. Hard. Place for a woman to last the winter." She shot him a look that could have melted ice. "Then it's a good thing I'm not just any woman." Jack almost smiled. Almost. He tipped his hat. "Name's Jack Rowan." She hesitated, then said, "Evelyn Moore." The name felt like wind through an old memory, like something familiar, though he couldn't place why. She turned to fix her harness, trying to set the wheel again, but her hands were trembling. The cold had bitten deep. Without a word, he took off his gloves and handed them to her. She frowned, about to refuse, but the warmth still lingering in the leather stopped her. She took them quietly. "You think every woman needs saving?" she muttered. "No," he said, his eyes catching hers in the gray dawn. "Just the ones who don't ask for it." For the first time, she looked at him differently, not with anger but curiosity. He was taller than most, the kind of man who looked like he'd built his own silence and learned to live inside it. The kind of man who'd buried something deep and never let it thaw. She took a slow breath, then said, "You got a wife somewhere, Jack Rowan?" "Had one. Long time ago. You leave her?" "No," he said, voice softer now. "She left this world." The wind blew between them, carrying the sound of the horses stamping against the frost. Evelyn looked down, her expression unreadable. I'm sorry, she said quietly. Don't be. Life's crueler to the ones that stay. He turned to leave, picking up his cup again, the steam curling into the cold. You'll need help hauling that wagon back to town, he said. She shook her head. I don't go to town. Why not? Because folks there like to talk more than they work. And you? I work. Jack chuckled under his breath. Reckon that makes two of us. He started to walk away, but her voice stopped him, sharp, clear, cutting through the wind. Jack Rowan, she called. You plan on spending this winter just drinking coffee and running from ghosts? He turned slowly, eyes narrowing. And if I am? She met his gaze without flinching, her breath misting in the air. Then you're a fool, she said. You want a wife or just a winter alone? For a second even the wind stopped. The question hung there, burning in the cold. Jack didn't answer. He just stood still, his jaw tight, his eyes shadowed with something old and dangerous. Then he said softly, Careful, Miss Moore. Some questions bite back. She smiled, the smallest, most fearless smile he'd seen in years. Then I guess I'll risk the teeth. The snow came down heavier that week, turning the plains white and silent. Jack Rowan hadn't planned on staying near Evelyn Moore's land, but every trail seemed to lead him back there. Maybe it was the storm. Maybe it was the way her words kept echoing in his head. You want a wife or just a winter alone? He'd laughed it off that morning, told himself she was just another stubborn soul too proud for her own good. But each night when the wind howled against his cabin walls and the fire burned low, he couldn't shake the sound of her voice or the look in her eyes when she said it. There was something in that woman that stirred what he'd buried long ago, the part of him that still wanted to feel warm. By the fourth day, her wagon hadn't moved an inch from where it broke down. He told himself he wasn't going to check. Then he saddled his horse anyway. The snow was waist-high in places, the wind sharp enough to flay skin. When he reached her fence, she was out there again, chopping wood like the devil was watching. Her coat was dusted white, her breath coming in sharp bursts, and yet she moved with the strength of someone who'd sworn never to fall. Jack swung down from his horse, brushing snow off his hat. You planning on chopping through winter itself? He called out. She looked up, sweat mixing with frost on her forehead. It's either that or freeze, he smirked. You could have sent word to town. They'd help. Town's too far, and they talk too much, she shot back, splitting another log clean in two. Besides, I've got two hands. That's all the help I need. Jack leaned against the fence. You sure about that? I was sure last time you asked, she said, but this time her tone was softer. Maybe she was tired. Maybe she was lonely. He took the axe from her without asking and split the next log. You swing too high, he said. Waste your strength. And you waste your time telling me. That, maybe, he split another and another until the pile grew higher. She finally sighed and leaned against the fence beside him. For a moment, neither spoke. The wind moaned low, carrying the smell of pine and smoke from her chimney. Then she said quietly, You ever get tired of pretending you don't care? He turned to her, his eyes hardening. I don't pretend. Sure you do, she said, meeting his gaze. I can see it. You've been running from something so long you forgot what it feels like to stop. He didn't answer. Instead, he handed her the axe and walked toward his horse. Thanks for the wisdom, he said dryly. But before he mounted up, she called out, Jack. He paused. You could stay for supper, she said. It's nothing fancy, stew and bread, but it's warm. That single word, warm, hit him harder than a bullet. He almost said no, almost. But something in her eyes made him nod. Just supper, he said. Don't make it sound like a proposal. Wouldn't dream of it. she replied with a faint smile. Inside her cabin, the fire cracked and threw orange light across the rough walls. The place was small, clean, and filled with the quiet hum of a life fought for. She set 2 bowls on the table, her hands steady despite the chill still in them. Jack sat down, his hat resting beside him. They ate in silence for a while, the only sound the clink of spoons in the wind outside. Then she asked softly, "You ever miss her?" He froze. "Who?" "The one who left this world." He looked into the fire, jaw tight. "Every damn day," he said finally. "I thought if I stayed alone long enough, maybe the world would forget her name. But it doesn't. Some ghosts don't fade." Evelyn nodded slowly. "Maybe they're not supposed to fade. Maybe they're supposed to remind us we're still alive." Her words lingered in the warm air. He studied her. The way her eyes glowed in the firelight, the small scar near her jaw, the quiet strength in her voice. She wasn't beautiful in the way city women were. She was something fiercer, real. The kind of woman who didn't just survive winter. She stared it down. Then she said something that made his chest tighten. "You think being alone keeps you safe, Jack, but it just keeps you cold." He laughed under his breath, a hollow sound. "And you think warmth fixes everything?" "No," she said, leaning closer. "But it's a start." Outside, the wind howled harder, rattling the windows. The storm was coming full force. Jack stood, walked to the door, and peered out into the white. "You won't last out here if this keeps up," he said. "Neither will you," she countered. "Your cabin's 2 miles off, and the drifts are rising fast." He turned back, eyes locked on hers. "You saying I should stay?" "I'm saying," she whispered, "you don't have to be alone tonight." The air between them grew heavy, the kind that carries more truth than either wants to admit. Jack hesitated, torn between the past that haunted him and the fire that flickered now in her eyes. Then he nodded once and took off his coat. They sat by the fire long into the night, trading stories between silences. She told him about the farm her husband had left her, the sickness that took him, and the promise she'd made to keep the land alive. He told her about the trail, about the loss that had carved him hollow. And somewhere between laughter and quiet tears, they found something fragile but real, a warmth that neither had felt in years. By morning, the storm had buried the world outside, a sea of white stretching forever. Jack stood by the window watching the snow drift softly. Evelyn came beside him, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. "Well," she said lightly, "looks like you're stuck here." "Cowboy." He smiled faintly. "Could be worse." "How's that?" "Could have been stuck alone." She looked up at him, her eyes soft. "You're not alone anymore." And though he didn't say it, for the first time in a long, long while, Jack Rowan believed her. And just like that, something shifted. The air between them no longer cold but alive. The dawn light spread across the plains, and in that silence, 2 lonely souls stood facing the long winter ahead, not yet knowing it would change them both forever.